He didn't ask for money. He didn't beg. He stood there, at the entrance of a luxury auto shop, grease-stained floors behind the glass, million-dollar cars inside, and said something that made everyone laugh. "Can I fix it? In exchange for a meal?" The laughter came fast and cruel. A homeless black man, worn clothes, uncombed gray hair, daring to point at a high-end sports car that had defeated professional mechanics for days. To them, he was a joke, a mistake that wandered in from the street. But if you were watching closely, you would have noticed his eyes. Calm, focused, not desperate. The eyes of someone who wasn't guessing, but remembering. Why did he study that open engine bay like a musician reading a familiar score? Why did the mockery never shake him? If you've ever seen judgment disguised as humor, injustice masked as laughter, take a second to like and subscribe. This story doesn't let go. Ironclad Auto Works sat on the edge of Southside Detroit like a fortress of steel and ego. Polished glass, spotless concrete, luxury cars lined up inside like trophies. It was a place built to intimidate, to remind anyone who walked in who had power and who did not. And standing at the entrance, framed by automatic doors that hesitated before closing on him, Ethan Cole looked like he didn't belong to this world at all. Raymond Holt barely lifted his eyes from the clipboard in his hands. One glance was enough. The worn jacket, the shoes that had seen too many winters, the posture of a man who had slept on concrete more nights than beds. Raymond's voice was flat, practiced, already annoyed. "Call security," he said, as if Ethan were a stain that needed to be wiped away. "These people come in every day looking for handouts." Logan snorted from behind a lifted hood. Mike shook his head, not even trying to hide his contempt. To them, Ethan wasn't a person. He was background noise, an inconvenience that wandered in from the street. Power sat comfortably on their shoulders, and they wore it carelessly. "I'm not asking for money." The voice cut through the space quietly, but it carried weight, not loud, not desperate, calm in a way that didn't fit the scene. Ethan stood still, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes steady. "I'm asking for work." That earned him a second look. Not because they respected the words, but because they didn't expect them. Logan laughed first, sharp and young. "Work?" He glanced at Mike, then back at Ethan. "This isn't a soup kitchen, man." Mike joined in, the laugh of someone who had spent years confusing experience with superiority. Ethan's gaze drifted past them, landing on the Porsche sitting in the center bay. Hood open, engine exposed, a machine that had defeated everyone in the room for 3 straight days. "I can fix that," he said evenly, "in exchange for a meal." The shop exploded with laughter, loud, unchecked, cruel. Logan nearly dropped the wrench in his hand. Mike leaned back against the car, shaking his head in disbelief. "Did you hear that?" he called out. "The guy wants to fix a Porsche, a $200,000 Porsche." Raymond finally looked up, a slow smile curling on his face, the kind that only appears when someone thinks they're untouchable. Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He didn't explain himself. He simply kept looking at the car, his eyes tracing lines no one else seemed to see. Not like a scavenger, like a professional studying a problem he already understood. From the far end of the shop, Emily Carter watched it all unfold. She said nothing. While the laughter bounced off the walls, she noticed what the others didn't. The stillness in Ethan's posture, the absence of fear, the way humiliation slid past him without leaving a mark. Something about it unsettled her. Because people who have nothing left to lose don't usually stand that calmly, and people who are guessing don't look that certain. Raymond crossed his arms, the smile still clinging to his face, waiting for the moment this little interruption would collapse on itself. He expected excuses. He expected retreat. What he didn't expect was silence. Ethan didn't rush to defend himself. He stepped closer to the Porsche, just enough to hear it. Mike turned the key again, letting the engine struggle to life. The sound filled the shop, uneven, strained, like something choking on its own breath. Ethan closed his eyes, not dramatically, not for show, just long enough to listen. The laughter softened, then faded, replaced by confusion. He tilted his head slightly, as if following a rhythm only he could hear. When he spoke, his voice was low and certain. "Direct injection system," he said. "Fuel pressure sensor is failing. That's why it dies at high RPM. Not mechanical, electronic." The words landed heavier than anyone expected. Mike frowned. He had spent 3 days chasing ghosts inside that engine. Logan opened his mouth to laugh again, but the sound didn't come out this time. Raymond scoffed, quick to recover. "You figured that out just by listening?" He shook his head. "Lucky guess. Anyone can say words." Ethan opened his eyes and looked straight at him. For the first time, there was something else there. Not anger, not pride, memory. "It's not a guess," he said. "That noise happens when the sensor sends inconsistent data to the control unit. The system cuts fuel as a safety measure. Short, precise, no extra syllables wasted." From the back of the shop, Emily felt her chest tighten. That explanation wasn't something you picked up on YouTube. It was the kind of detail learned through repetition, failure, and mastery. She stepped forward without realizing it. "How do you know that?" she asked, ignoring the looks thrown her way. Ethan hesitated, just for a beat. "I've worked with performance cars," he said. Raymond laughed loudly. "Where? Junkyard?" The room joined in, but this time the laughter sounded thinner. Ethan didn't smile. A shadow crossed his face and disappeared just as fast. "In different places," he replied. "I can prove it." He gestured toward the diagnostic scanner in the corner, the expensive one, the one Logan wasn't even allowed to touch. "I just need that." Logan raised an eyebrow. "You even know how to use an advanced OBD scanner?" "I do." The confidence wasn't loud. That's what made it unsettling. Raymond studied him for a moment, irritation mixing with curiosity. Then the cruelty returned. "Fine," he said. "Here's the deal. You get it right, you walk out with $20 and a sandwich. You get it wrong, you don't come back. Ever." He pulled out his phone, already thinking about views. Ethan nodded once, as if the terms meant nothing. As he walked toward the scanner, Emily noticed his hands. They weren't shaking from fear. They trembled with restraint, like someone standing on the edge of something they had spent years trying to bury. The moment the scanner powered on, the shop changed. The laughter died first, then the whispers. What replaced them was something heavier: silence, the kind that presses against your ears until you start hearing your own doubts. Ethan stood in front of the machine like it belonged to him. His fingers moved across the screen with calm precision, tapping menus, entering sequences, navigating layers Logan didn't even know existed. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hesitant. It was measured, deliberate, like a pianist touching keys he had played 1,000 times before. Each motion flowed into the next, smooth and exact, as if the machine were responding to him rather than the other way around. Logan shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The grin he had worn minutes ago faded, replaced by a tight jaw and narrowed eyes. "That's not a basic menu," he muttered under his breath. Mike leaned in closer, trying to follow the screen, his confidence draining with every second. He had worked on cars for 2 decades, yet he had never seen anyone access the engine management system that quickly. The scanner beeped softly, filling the room with an electronic pulse that seemed louder than it should have been. Ethan's eyes never left the display. Data streamed past, numbers and codes flashing in quiet rhythm. No commentary, no explanation, just focus. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. "There," Ethan said at last. One word, calm, final. He turned the screen slightly so they could see it. Code P0294, fuel pressure sensor out of the parameters. He paused, then added, "Exactly what I told you." Mike stepped forward and stared at the reading, his face drained of color. He refreshed the scan, then ran it again. Same result. His shoulders sagged. That's right, he admitted, barely above a whisper. 3 days. We spent 3 days on this. Raymond snapped his phone down to his side, irritation flickering across his face. "Beginner's luck," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Anyone can push buttons until something pops up." Ethan turned to him for the first time, not aggressively, not defensively. He simply looked at Raymond, and something in that gaze made the room feel smaller. "Do you want me to explain why this sensor fails on this model when the fuel filter isn't replaced on schedule?" he asked. Or why the next failure will be worse if it's ignored?" Raymond opened his mouth, then closed it. Logan jumped in, desperate to regain ground. "Okay, fine. You got one right. That doesn't make you a mechanic." Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. "If you don't fix this now," he said, "you'll see ignition misfires within 6 months. After that, the injectors will start compensating. That's when it gets expensive." Emily felt a chill run through her. This wasn't guessing. This was foresight. Mike stared at the Porsche like it had betrayed him. Logan looked away. Raymond stood frozen, caught between denial and a truth he didn't want to face. The silence returned, thicker than before. In that quiet, something shifted. Ethan wasn't asking for permission anymore. He wasn't proving himself. He was simply stating facts. And for the first time, the power in the room no longer belonged to the men who owned the shop. It belonged to the man who understood the machine better than anyone else ever had. Raymond felt the room slipping from him, and it showed. He straightened his back, lifted his chin, tried to reclaim the space with posture alone. "That's enough," he said sharply. "You got lucky with one car. Don't start acting like you run this place." Ethan didn't respond right away. He turned his head slightly, eyes drifting past Raymond toward the far corner of the shop. Toward the BMW that had been sitting there for weeks, hood closed, dust settling like a quiet accusation. "That one," he said calmly. "The X5. You told the owner it needs a new engine." The words landed like a dropped tool on concrete. Raymond stiffened. "How would you know what I told a customer?" "Because it doesn't," Ethan replied. He took a step closer, not invading space but narrowing it. "The engine isn't the problem, it's the high-pressure fuel pump. $1,200, you quoted $15,000. Logan swallowed hard. "You can't tell that without tearing it apart." "I heard it," Ethan said. "When you started it earlier, that hesitation, that uneven pulse, it's always the same sound." Raymond laughed, loud and brittle. "This is ridiculous. You're guessing again." "Then let me prove it." Before anyone could stop him, Ethan moved to the BMW. He opened the hood with a familiarity that sent a ripple through the room. His hands hovered for a moment, then pointed. "Look here, the wear on the fuel lines, the oxidation. These marks don't come from engine failure. They come from pressure inconsistency." Mike stepped forward despite himself. He checked the area, then grabbed another scanner, his movement stiff, rushed. The screen lit up. He froze, ran the test again. Same result. His face burned red. "He's right," he said quietly. "If we sold an engine on this, we'd be charging $14,000 for a problem that doesn't exist." The air shifted. Logan stared at the floor. Emily felt her heart pounding. Raymond took a step back, then another, shaking his head. "Coincidence," he snapped. "Two coincidences. That's all this is." Ethan turned slowly. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Raymond looked away first. "Coincidence," Ethan repeated, his voice low. "That's what you call it when you don't want to face the truth." Raymond's control cracked. "You don't belong here," he said, advancing now, desperate. "You think a few tricks make you someone? Do you still want that sandwich, or are you done pretending?" Ethan didn't move. The silence stretched. When he spoke, it wasn't loud, but it carried. "I've lost everything," he said. "When you have nothing left to lose, the truth stops being dangerous. It becomes a weapon." No one laughed. No one spoke. Raymond stood there, exposed, realizing too late that the power he thought he owned had never been real. Ethan didn't wait for permission to leave. He didn't look back for approval or apology. He simply turned toward the door and walked out, his footsteps soft against the concrete, swallowed by the noise of the street. No one tried to stop him, not Raymond, not Logan, not Mike. The shop stood frozen, as if everyone sensed that saying anything now would only make things worse. Emily followed him with her eyes, something tightening in her chest. Through the glass, she watched him pause on the sidewalk. His shoulders slumped, not from defeat, but from weight. A weight he had been carrying long before he stepped into Ironclad Auto Works. Across the street, taped to a rusted lamppost, was a faded poster. A child's face. Missing. The paper curled at the edges, ignored by everyone who passed. Ethan stared at it longer than necessary, long enough for a tear to slip down his cheek before he wiped it away and walked on. Emily stood there long after he disappeared into the crowd. That image stayed with her, the calm authority in his voice, the precision in his hands, the way humiliation never touched him. And now, that look on his face, grief that old doesn't belong to ordinary men. That night, sleep never came. Emily lay in the dark replaying every second. The way he named systems without hesitation. The way he predicted failures like memories instead of guesses. At 2 a.m, she sat up, heart racing, and knew she couldn't let it go. She opened her laptop and began typing the phrases he had used. Direct skull, injection system, fuel pressure sensor, model years, failure patterns. The results made her breath catch. These weren't common discussions. They lived deep inside specialized forums, buried in threads only engineers, elite technicians, or professional drivers ever touched. One username kept appearing. Old posts, detailed breakdowns, predictions written years before the problems were officially acknowledged. The writing style felt familiar, calm, certain, almost gentle. Emily leaned back in her chair as the pieces began to shift into place. Whoever Ethan Cole was, he wasn't running from ignorance. He was carrying history, and whatever he had lost, it was big enough to drive a man into silence, into the streets, into a life of penance. As dawn crept through her window, Emily realized something else. This wasn't just about a misunderstood man. It was about a truth hidden in plain sight, and she had a feeling that once she uncovered it, nothing at Ironclad Auto Works would ever be the same again. The next morning, Ironclad Auto Works felt different before anyone even spoke. The air was tighter, charged with unfinished tension. Raymond was halfway through barking orders when the glass doors opened again. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every head turned. Ethan Cole stood at the entrance, just as he had the day before. Same worn jacket, same quiet presence. But this time, he wasn't alone. Beside him walked a woman who didn't belong to Southside Detroit. Victoria Reynolds moved with unhurried confidence, her tailored coat immaculate, her posture unmistakable, the kind of woman who never had to raise her voice to be heard. Raymond's face drained of color the moment he recognized her. She was a client he couldn't afford to lose, a name whispered with respect in private offices. "Good morning," Ethan said calmly. "This is Victoria Reynolds. You told her this car was beyond repair." The McLaren sat outside, gleaming like a challenge, a $1 million machine that had humiliated every technician who touched it. Electrical failures, software conflicts, a problem no one could trace. Raymond opened his mouth, then closed it again. Victoria smiled, but there was steel beneath it. "I met Ethan last night," she said. "He explained my car's issue in 10 minutes, more clearly than any dealership has in 6 months. Logan stared. Mike looked away. Emily felt her pulse spike. Ethan didn't waste time. He walked straight to the McLaren, placed a hand on the hood, and closed his eyes for a moment. Not to listen this time, to remember. "Hybrid control module," he said. "Conflict between electric motor and combustion software. Known defect. Never publicly admitted." The room went silent. Emily rushed to a terminal, her fingers flying. A restricted technical bulletin appeared on the screen. Confidential. Dealer only. Every word matched Ethan's diagnosis. "How do you know this?" Mike asked, his voice unsteady. Ethan didn't answer. He was already working. For the next 2 hours, the shop watched something none of them had ever seen. There was no panic, no wasted movement. Every action had purpose. Every adjustment flowed into the next like choreography. It felt less like mechanical work and more like watching a surgeon restore a failing heart. Tools were set down exactly where they would be needed again. Cables rerouted with instinctive precision. Software rewritten with a confidence that bordered on reverence. Time moved strangely, too fast and too slow all at once. When Ethan finally stepped back, he wiped his hands and nodded once. "Try it." Victoria pressed the ignition. The McLaren came alive, smooth and controlled, its previous stutter gone. The sound filled the shop, clean and powerful. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "3 dealerships told me it was impossible," she whispered. No one spoke. Raymond stood frozen, his authority collapsing in real time. Logan looked like he'd seen a ghost. Mike's hands trembled. "If you're holding your breath right now, ask yourself this and leave it in the comments. What would you do if you realized you'd been mocking greatness the entire time?" Ethan stepped away from the car, already turning toward the door. He didn't look triumphant. He looked complete. Emily didn't wait for permission. The moment Ethan disappeared through the door, she went straight back to her desk, heart racing, fingers already shaking over the keyboard. The name Ethan Cole echoed in her mind, but now it carried weight. Too much weight for a coincidence. She typed faster, pulling threads she hadn't dared touch before. Archived forums, old race footage, private engineering discussions buried deep beneath years of dust. Then she saw it. The same calm tone, the same precision in language, the same habit of predicting failures before anyone else believed they existed. A username flashed on the screen, one she had skimmed past the night before without understanding its meaning. Phantom Racing. Her breath caught as she clicked. Photos loaded slowly, too slowly. A younger man stared back at her from the screen, clean-cut, confident, standing on podiums with champagne spraying around him, crowds screaming his name. Headlines followed, a prodigy, a genius behind the wheel. Ethan, the Phantom Cole, one of the most feared drivers of his generation. A man known for appearing out of nowhere and winning races no one thought were possible. Emily felt the room spin. The dates told the rest of the story in brutal silence. The crash, a catastrophic failure at over 200 miles per hour. Ethan survived. His family didn't. His young daughter, watching from the stands, collapsing in shock. His wife, unable to live with the aftermath. The headlines stopped abruptly. The interviews ended. The legend vanished. Emily leaned back, tears blurring the screen. 15 years. 15 years of disappearance, of penance, of a man who had lost everything and chosen obscurity over sympathy, silence over applause. Raymond's voice drifted across the shop, still pretending control, still talking as if none of this mattered. The sound felt obscene now. His confidence, his cruelty, his laughter from the day before. Emily looked up at him and realized something terrifying. He wasn't powerful, he was small, and the silence he clung to now wasn't dominance, it was ignorance. She stood and spoke before she could stop herself. "You don't know who he is," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "You don't know what you just did." Raymond scoffed weakly. "Another theory?" "No," Emily replied. "The truth." She turned the screen toward them. The photos, the articles, the name that made Mike's face go pale and Logan's mouth fall open. "Ethan the Phantom Cole," she said. "World-class racing legend. A man who lost his family and disappeared from the world." No one laughed now. The room absorbed the weight all at once. Raymond said nothing. He couldn't. His silence, once loud with authority, now sounded ridiculous, a hollow echo in the presence of something real. Emily closed the laptop slowly. The truth was out, and there was no undoing it. Raymond tried to regain ground the only way he knew how, with a phone in his hand and a smirk he no longer deserved. He stepped aside, lowered his voice, and hit record. "You won't believe this," he muttered to the camera, replaying the humiliation in his mind. A homeless man pretending to be an expert. A perfect story for clicks, for laughter, for control. In his world, exposure was power. Emily felt her stomach turn. She watched the screen reflect in his eyes and understood, with sudden clarity, that this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intent. Raymond wasn't embarrassed by what he'd done. He was disappointed it hadn't gone viral yet. "Don't post that," she said sharply. Raymond scoffed. "Why not? It's free content. People love watching someone fail." Emily didn't argue. She acted. She pulled out her phone and tapped to the screen, calm and deliberate. "You're right," she said. "People do love the truth." She turned the device toward him. The video played, not his version, the real one, the laughter, the insults, the sandwich offer. The moments that revealed exactly who they were before they knew who Ethan was. She had uploaded it hours ago. The numbers climbed in real time. Thousands of shares, angry comments, names being named. Raymond's face drained of color. Before he could speak, the doors opened again. This time, the presence that entered the shop didn't need an introduction. William Harrington stepped inside, suit immaculate, expression unreadable. He glanced at the screen once. That was enough. "Raymond Holt," he said evenly. "Effective immediately. Harrington Performance Group is terminating every contract with this shop." Raymond stammered. "You don't understand. It was a joke." William's gaze didn't soften. "I understand perfectly. I don't do business with people who humiliate others for entertainment." The fallout was immediate. Phones buzzed. Emails flooded in. Clients canceled. Partners pulled out. Ironclad Auto Works didn't collapse with a bang. It crumbled in silence, exposed by its own behavior. Ethan watched from a distance, detached, untouched by the chaos. William approached him with respect. "We'd like to offer you a position," he said. "Lead technical director, full authority." Ethan considered it quietly. No triumph, no revenge, just balance being restored. Justice didn't arrive with raised voices or broken fists. It came through consequences. And for the first time, Ironclad Auto Works faced the cost of everything it had laughed at. 6 months later, the noise had settled. The headlines faded. The outrage moved on to something else. But the consequences remained. Ethan Cole no longer walked the streets of Southside Detroit unnoticed. He stood at the helm of one of the most respected performance divisions in the industry, not chasing applause, not reclaiming fame, but doing what he had always done best, understanding machines at their limits, guiding others with quiet authority. The legend had returned, not louder but wiser. Emily Carter's life changed too. The woman who chose to speak when silence was easier was no longer just a technician in the background. She was trusted, valued, and given a seat at tables where character mattered more than appearances. Her reward wasn't luck, it was courage. Ironclad Auto Works never recovered. Contracts disappeared, clients walked away. Raymond Holt lost the business, the reputation, and the illusion of power he had built on humiliation. There were no dramatic apologies that could undo it. Some doors, once closed, stay that way. Ethan was asked once if he considered it revenge. He shook his head. Revenge looks backward. This didn't. This was simply the truth catching up, a balance restored, a reminder that talent doesn't announce itself with clean clothes or perfect timing. Prejudice doesn't just blind you, it makes you miss legends standing right in front of you. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it. Somewhere out there, extraordinary souls are still being overlooked, and their stories deserve to be seen.